Keir Starmer's leadership has become a political case study in how to squander public trust, alienate supporters, and turn opportunity into calamity. Labour's disastrous policy decisions, flip-flopping on Brexit, and cynical disregard for the working people they claim to represent have exposed not just Starmer's ineptitude but the party's broader moral and strategic bankruptcy. How did we get here? Let's dissect this train wreck. When Starmer ascended to leadership, he sold himself as a man of principle, a pragmatic, centrist leader who could unite the fractured Labour Party and restore its credibility after Jeremy Corbyn's divisive tenure. He promised to respect the Brexit referendum result, to focus on economic growth, and to deliver a bold vision for Britain. Fast forward to today, and it's clear that Starmer's Labour is a directionless, incoherent mess, incapable of speaking to the needs of ordinary Britons. Take Brexit, the issue that defined the political landscape for years and handed the Tories their 2019 landslide victory. Starmer initially vowed to make Brexit work, a pledge that resonated with millions of Leave voters who felt betrayed by Labour's previous attempts to reverse the referendum. Yet now, he appears to be inching Britain back toward Brussels, entertaining trade agreements like the Pan-Euro-Mediterranean Convention, which would drag the UK back into the EU's regulatory orbit. This is not about trade, it's about sovereignty. By reopening the door to EU alignment, Starmer is spitting in the face of Brexit voters who demanded independence from European bureaucracy. Labour's ambiguity on whether they support or oppose these moves reeks of political cowardice, and the Tories have rightly capitalised on this dithering. As Dame Priti Patel pointed out, Labour's flirtation with Brussels is a disgrace, and it's not just Conservatives who think so. Even Labour supporters are asking, if Labour won't stand by its promises on Brexit, what else will they betray? The betrayal doesn't stop there. Starmer's housing and infrastructure policies are masterclass in contradiction, incompetence, and cynicism. Labour has long decried the housing crisis and promised to build more homes, but their latest reforms undercut their own rhetoric. By limiting legal challenges to infrastructure projects to a single attempt, Labour claims they are streamlining the development process. In reality, they are bulldozing the rights of local communities and environmental groups to hold developers accountable. Worse, their so-called Nature Restoration Fund is little more than a bribe, allowing developers to sidestep environmental assessments by paying a fee. This pay-to-pollute scheme is as cynical as it is short-sighted, and it has infuriated environmentalists, Labour's own supporters, and the very communities they claim to protect. But perhaps the most grotesque betrayal is Labour's proposed inheritance tax for the families of deceased servicemen. This policy is an affront to every principle of decency and respect for those who have sacrificed their lives for this country. The idea that grieving families, already bearing the unbearable weight of loss, should face additional financial burdens is morally repugnant. Labour MPs who supported this move have sparked national outrage, and rightly so. The backlash has been swift and fierce, with ordinary Britons calling it a betrayal of the highest order. How can a party that claims to champion fairness and compassion justify such a callous policy? Starmer's support for Rachel Reeves, the architect of this disgraceful tax, only underscores his detachment from the values of ordinary people. Speaking of Reeves, her economic policies are a disaster in their own right. Labour's Extended Producer Responsibility, EPR, scheme, a levy on retailers and manufacturers to cover packaging waste costs, is set to add £1.4 billion a year to household expenses. Sold as part of Labour's green agenda, this policy is yet another regressive tax on working families already struggling with the cost of living crisis. Instead of holding corporations and the wealthy accountable, Labour is asking the public to foot the bill for their net zero fantasies. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. Reeves' broader budget proposals are riddled with fantasy economics, gaping holes, and contradictions. Her decision to relax rules for non-doms, after years of Labour bashing the wealthy, has left both supporters and critics scratching their heads. Is Labour for the working class or the global elite? At this point, it's impossible to tell. Labour's internal disarray mirrors their policy chaos. Starmer's leadership is under siege, with whispers of dissent growing louder among Labour MPs. The party's membership is plummeting, and the once loyal media are turning against him. Even outlets that hailed Starmer as Labour's saviour are now sharpening their knives, labelling him indecisive and out of touch. The public perception of Starmer as a weak, ineffectual leader is solidifying with every blunder, and his inability to articulate a coherent vision for Britain has left Labour adrift. But let's not forget the bigger picture. Labour's failings under Starmer are not just about poor leadership, they reflect a deeper crisis of identity. Labour has become a party that tries to be everything to everyone and ends up standing for nothing. They pander to business elites while alienating their base. They promise bold reforms but deliver watered-down compromises. They posture as the party of fairness but impose policies that punish the very people they claim to defend. This contradiction is unsustainable, and it's driving voters away in droves. The stakes couldn't be higher. With the next general election looming, Labour is running out of time to save themselves from electoral oblivion. But unless Starmer can reverse course, on Brexit, on housing, on economic policy, and on his own leadership, the party is doomed to repeat its past mistakes. The British public deserves a real alternative to Conservative rule, not a pale imitation that can't decide what it stands for. Keir Starmer promised to rebuild Labour as a party of integrity, competence, and vision. Instead, he has delivered betrayal, confusion, and failure. Labour's descent into political irrelevance is not just a tragedy for the party, it's a tragedy for the country. Britain deserves better.